What is up, fellow rugby fans around the world? Before we get started with this video, I just want to thank everyone for the amazing support I received on my first video. I honestly did not think this video would receive this much attention, but I really do appreciate it. Now, although this video was talking more about the bad decisions that were made during the Italy-South African game last weekend, I do still want to talk about some of the positive things that we see within rugby. In particular, I want to create some excitement around upcoming games. I don't want to be negative all the time. Now, although I will be making videos like this in the future as well, I do want to also try doing some very positive and exciting videos. One of the videos I do want to do is to create some excitement around the rugby that we will be seeing this weekend. Yes, this is the last week that we will be seeing some international games, barring the Wales-South Africa game next week. However, I will continue these videos when we see the URC return next week, and maybe I'll cover some other series. I really do want to get a bit deeper into the rugby around the world, to see some upcoming talents and get to know the players a bit better. Because at the moment, I really only know the South African players, and then some other very famous players internationally. So let's get started with this video. The format I will be following for these videos is that I will be looking at these games and then telling you how I think the game will play out. I think this will be exciting, and I think we can create some great engagement by having you guys let me know in the comments down below what you think the outcomes of these games will be. Just note that I haven't really watched a lot of the other teams play within this international series, so I don't really know some of these teams very well. If you guys can let me know in the comments down below what you think of my analysis, or where you think I'm underestimating or overestimating a team, I would really appreciate that. For the first match that we will be seeing this weekend, it's between Georgia and Japan. Now, I don't really know Georgia that well, and I know Japan a little bit because South Africa played against Japan 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. However, during the Rugby World Cup in 2023, I really liked the passion that Georgia showed when they played in their matches. I think that they are an incredible team, and if the World Cup is anything to go by, I think that Georgia can be a real uphill battle for Japan. If we look at the games that they played, we can see that Georgia only played the USA and Canada, and they beat both of the teams by relatively big margins. Quickly looking at the world rankings here, I can see that Canada is ranked 24th, the USA is ranked 16th, and Georgia is ranked 11th, and Japan is ranked 13 at the moment. So I think this could be a potentially really interesting game. If we look at the games that Japan played, we can see that they lost by pretty big margins. However, the Wales game, they actually came really close to winning that match. Now, I did watch a little bit of this match, and I was quite impressed with what Japan pulled off there. So I think ultimately this is actually a 50-50 match. For this though, I think Japan have been on really good form. I don't really know much about Georgia, but they are ranked higher than Japan. But I think I'm going to go with Japan in this match, and we'll say Japan by, let's say, 6. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. If we look at the history between Georgia and Japan, we can see it's pretty even Steven between them in the last 5 matches. Japan probably getting the better hand of the last 5 matches with this one. So yeah, I think Japan will have a pretty good chance of beating them in this match. The next match is between Romania and Uruguay. Now, Uruguay is ranked 15th, Romania is ranked 21st. I don't really know anything about both of these teams. I haven't watched any of their matches. Romania beat Canada and they lost to the USA. So they've probably been struggling a little bit. In the Rugby World Cup, I really enjoyed the passion that they showed for the sport and the passion that they had to represent their country. And that's true for both of these teams. So I actually wouldn't mind which team wins here. We can see that Uruguay beat Portugal by 18. Looking at the history between Romania and Uruguay, we can see that they've actually played a lot recently. Uruguay has come away with the win in 4 of the last 6 matches, with them actually putting quite a big score against Romania. Now, I really like the way Uruguay played during the Rugby World Cup, and Romania as well, but I think they're struggling a little bit, right? They don't really have the players for this. So I think we're going to go with Uruguay, and we'll put up a big score. I think, let's say 22. Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Now, Wales, New Zealand is going to be quite an interesting one, I think, because the Wales have been really on struggle town the last few years. I feel like they're starting to get back into their old form, but they're not really there yet. They've lost to Argentina by 24 points. They beat Japan by 1. So not a great sign. New Zealand, yes, they've been on pretty bad form recently, but I think overall they're a really good team, and if they're on the day, then they can put up a big score against Wales. Now, they beat Ireland by 13, Scotland by 8, England, they lost to England by 14, so yeah, that's really not a good record for them, to be honest. But I think this will be a really interesting match. I just don't think that Wales will be able to put up a good enough fight, considering that they beat Japan by only 1 point and they lost to Argentina by 24. And I would say New Zealand is just above Argentina's level, but who knows, maybe after last week's defeat they'll come back with a big score. So I think we'll say New Zealand by 28. I think they're going to put up quite a big score here. But yeah, you never really know with these matches. All right, Portugal, Canada. Again, two teams I don't really know much about. The passion from Portugal, though, during the Rugby World Cup, I really, really like. They were my favorite underdog team. I remember really rooting hard for them. But again, they don't really have the best players and they're struggling quite a lot. So if we look at their recent form, they lost against Uruguay by 18 points, which, you know, it's actually not too bad for a team like Portugal. If we look at the rankings, though, they're 20th, whereas Uruguay is 15th. But I do think Uruguay is quite a good team, especially if the World Cup is anything to go by. Canada, we see, lost to Romania and to Georgia by quite a margin, right? So I think these teams are probably on equal playing field. However, since I like Portugal so much, I think I'm going to give them the edge, and we'll give it to them by 10 points. Right? A try and a penalty kick seems pretty good to me. Spain versus Fiji. Now, Spain I don't really know much about, but Fiji I actually really like, because in most of the matches they play, they're underdogs, right? I feel like they're in a weird spot where they're like between tiers, right? You have the tier 1 nations of like France, Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand, and then you have the second tier, and I feel like Fiji falls in between those two tiers, especially from what I've seen from the World Cup. If we look at the rankings, though, we can see Fiji is 8th at the moment, which is pretty good, and Spain is 14th. I think Fiji's intensity during their matches is significant. I don't think Spain is that good, though, so I think Fiji will take this win. And I think just because I'm rooting for them, I'll give them a pretty substantial margin. I'm going to say Fiji by 15. All right, and now probably the most interesting game of this weekend is Ireland versus South Africa. I'm really excited for this one, because as a South African fan, the Irish have, over the last few years, have been our top nemesis, I think. They've been the team that we've really struggled against, and I think they've been playing really well. If we take a look at their record, though, in the last 3 matches, they lost against New Zealand, but then they beat Japan by 31 and they beat Australia by 27. If we look at South Africa, they beat Japan by 54, so that gives us a kind of direct comparison between the two teams. They beat France by 15 and they beat Italy by 18. Again, these last 2 matches have basically been South Africa playing with 14 men, which also roots really well for them. As a South African, I obviously have to go with my team. I think they've been on great form. I think the Irish have been slacking a little bit, especially compared to what they had before the previous World Cup and during the previous World Cup. So I think I'll go with South Africa. Now, this could either be a really tight game, or I think South Africa could run away with this, but you never really know. So I think I'm gonna go with South Africa by 12. I would really like it if South Africa can beat Ireland by 20 or 30 points. That would be really nice, but I doubt that would happen. So we'll go with 12. By the way, I really like this rivalry between these two teams. It's been amazing to watch. Even though we as South Africans have been on the losing end between this rivalry, I think it's time that we turn it around, and I think we have a team that we can do that with, so we'll go with that. All right, France versus Australia. I think this is going to be an interesting match. I don't think Australia is that great, but they've definitely gotten a lot better over the last few years after the World Cup. I feel like France have died down a little bit, probably because they they haven't had Dupont especially, and maybe some of their other players in recent matches. France lost to South Africa, and then they beat Fiji by 13. Australia, they lost against England by 18. They lost to Italy by 7, and then they lost to Ireland by 27. I think France will be able to take this quite comfortably, to be honest. I just don't think the Australians have been on great form recently. So we'll go with France here, and I think it's going to be a substantial margin. I'm going to say 21. All right, Italy and Chile. Chile, I don't know their team very well. They haven't really played, so I can't really compare them to anything. Italy, they played a really good game against South Africa. Their tackle technique is just not the greatest, so I feel like if they get the wrong ref, then they might get penalized for that a lot. But they beat Australia, which is a pretty good feat, and then they lost to South Africa. So I definitely think Italy will take this one. If we look at the rankings, Italy's 10th, then we have Chile, which is 18th. If we look at the history, okay, they haven't played each other, so yeah, I think Italy has been a really good team. They'll probably win this match, and I'm gonna say by, let's say 11. All right, then on to the Sunday matches. We have Scotland versus Tonga. Tonga, again, I don't know much about, but they're a lot like Fiji as a team. I think they can bring the brutality to the match, and if Scotland's not careful, then that could come back to bite them. Scotland beat the USA by quite a big margin, as expected. They lost to New Zealand by not a big margin, which is pretty good for them. And then they lost against Argentina by a similar margin. So yeah, if we look at the world rankings, obviously Scotland's 9th here. Tonga, they're 19th. I think if they really bring the brutality that they can, like the Fijians do, then Scotland could be in a bit of trouble. I just think Scotland will be too big of a feat for Tonga, so we'll go with Scotland by quite a big margin, I think. Let's say 29. If we also look at the history between Scotland and Tonga, I think it's pretty clear who's the better team at the moment. I think especially recently they've put on some pretty big scores against Tonga, and I don't think it will be really anything different this week. Then finally, for the last match this weekend, we have England versus Argentina. I think this is going to be a very important game for both teams. I think especially for England, because they've shown really good form recently. They've been very cocky recently, to be fair, and I think if they can beat Argentina by a substantial margin, then they have a bit of reason to be cocky. England, they beat Australia by 18, they beat Fiji by 20, and then also they beat New Zealand by 14, which honestly quite impressed by. If you look at Argentina, they beat Wales by 24. That's a pretty good score. And they beat Scotland by 9. I would expect a little bit more from Argentina, I won't lie. They've played really well recently, and I think they have an amazing team, but they also have some of their struggles. If we look at the recent history between these two teams, I think it's pretty clear who's been the better team in it over the history. But even though England have taken the wins, Argentina has come close to taking the win a few times. But I think with the recent form that England has been showing, they will realistically take this win as well. So even though, as much as I hate to say this, I'm going to say England will beat Argentina by 12. Yeah, I think Argentina is maybe slightly better than Australia, and they beat Australia by 18. So yeah, we'll say, let's say 14. All right, now that's it for this video. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think of this video format. I'm trying to do something a little bit different from everyone else. I think it's really interesting to look at all of the matches, make your predictions. By the way, let me know in the comments down below what you think of my predictions, if you think I'm completely silly with some of these, or or if you agree with me or not. But let me know what you think of this format. I hope these videos are at least entertaining to some degree. And once again, thank you for the support. I hope that this video will get as much support as the previous one. That it's just been amazing. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you have a lovely weekend with the rugby, and I'll see you in the next one.